speed, having that super fast Icy Wind speed drop.
Yeah, I know fact check me in this, but I mean, this may be the first game I've cast all year where both players have a Terra normal Pokemon. They are done with Shadow Rider Calyrex.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into game one, our first win and in of the weekend. Here you have Javier Senorena on the bottom of your screen with Miraidon Incineroar and Hirofumi Kimura or Shifu Fluttermane on the top of your screen.
Fun matchup here, potentially a lot of damage going either direction. Fluttermane going to make things a little bit more difficult for this Miraidon. Remind us of a time when Fluttermane was kind of the apex predator of VGC, threatening the potential of some powerful fairy type attacks into the currently very weak Miraidon.
Right, and Miraidon, one of the strong restricteds, but one of the big adjustments in the metagame has gone from either Terra Electric or anything like that. Most Miraidon, including Javier's, are now Terra Fairy to get out of that Fairy weakness.
And as we see the Pokemon in the back here, I think we're probably all excited to see what this Iron Hands can do. But that really is a fun look on this team, right? I think we often kind of just see the restricted Pokemon and a bunch of supportive Pokemon. There's 3 different Pokemon on this team that can do some serious damage.
Yeah, but some of those Pokemon in the backs we saw would not appreciate a Dazzling Gleam coming their way if Javier wants to switch one of them in, he will. Incineroar swapping out here on turn 1, not going for a fake out onto Hirofumi's side of the field. Instead, Iron Hand's going to swap in, activating that Electric Seed held item, boosting its defense by 1 stage. And then, of course, thanks to its ability, Quark Drive from its friend Miraidon, giving it an attack boost. So 2 boosts for the price of 1. What type of deal is that going to be for Javier? Terrestrializing out of that Dragon typing into the Fairy this time around. Now Dazzling Gleams will not be super effective from Hirofumi's Fluttermane. Let's see what happens. Fluttermane not attacking, just protecting here on this turn. Now it's going to be up to the Urshifu protecting as well. So now Miraidon's not going to get any damage.
Yeah, I mean, a little scouting turn for Hirofumi there, but I don't know if you're that upset if you're Javier. You get everything set up, you get your Iron Hands out in the field. I really do feel like that looks like a great Pokemon in this matchup, right? It'll be very difficult for that Calyrex potentially to deal with it, and it is now Miraidon's job just to kind of trade with this Fluttermane, right? It is super effective against the Iron Hands, so a little awkward there. No longer going to have the option of terrestrializing since Miraidon has used it already. But if Javier can get rid of that Fluttermane, potentially Iron Hands could be looking pretty good in this matchup.
Yeah, Iron Hands can no longer terrestrialize out of that weakness, right? Because Miraidon opted to Terra Fairy on the first turn here for Javier. So Javier will swap Urshifu into that slot. This is a Dazzling Gleam that's super effective on both, but of course the Iron Hands is really bulky, so it really doesn't take too much damage. And Urshifu is going to take out its brethren on the other side with those resisted, but yet always critically striking, surging strikes here.
A rough game for that Urshifu, but perhaps doing what it needs to do there, allowing some damage to go down onto the Fluttermane, maybe putting it in range where a Dazzling Gleam could do some serious work on this turn.
Now Miraidon will swap out. Remember, this is a choice specs Miraidon, which is many of them Miraidon are. You want to lock into one attack at the boost of 50% more damage. Of course, you can only click that attack, so that's why Javier switched it out that prior turn. Reset its attack here and try to, maybe go for Volt Switch turns or just maybe just as much damage as you can do.
Yeah, so it's sort of interesting spot here where Javier still can't really set up with this Iron Hands without trading really aggressively, where that Focus Sash on Urshifu could be big.
There's the target into the Miraidon. Doesn't even bring it down to half HP, though. And there's Dazzling Gleam. Spread attack. Knocks out the Fluttermane. Brings Urshifu down to its Focus Sash. So a lot of damage from this Terra Fairy Miraidon. Remember, you get the boost as well now that you're a Fairy type. So it's a lot of damage. Surging Strikes in response, though, from this Urshifu. It's going to hit 3 times guaranteed. And on the 3rd strike, Miraidon goes down. But I expect at the end of the turn, Iron Hands is going to be the only Pokemon left on the field as it can just KO the 1 HP Urshifu.
It could, although I guess the Swords Dance could be an option as well. But yeah, we do see it just picking up this easy knockout, and the Pokemon are falling quickly now. Both sides down to just 2 Pokemon. We've seen Incineroar as the remaining Pokemon for Javier. We'll have to see what Hirofumi's got in the back.
If it is a physical attacker, that's going to have its damage output hindered thanks to Incineroar's Intimidate. But Hirofumi finally revealing his last Pokemon. Of course, the Calyrex Ice Rider, his restricted Pokemon of choice, and the Raging Bolt. They are full HP, but because of the moves or the item choice here for Calyrex Ice Rider, this Intimidate will stick. It's Never Melt Ice instead of Clear Ambulance.
Yeah, it could be a big deal here, right? This is a strange matchup, but you know, maybe there's a world you get a fake out from Incineroar here, use that Swords Dance, and perhaps it can drain its way through this game. You know, the Raging Bolt on the opposing side really going to need to use its Draco Meteor attack probably to do realistic damage to this Iron Hands. And hey, you know, you can survive it, drain that HP back. Maybe you put it in a tough spot.
And the Iron Hands, remember that defense boost is going to stick no matter what. It activates right when Electric Terrain ends. So sure, Quark Drive will go away when the terrain is over, but the defense boost helping against the now intimidated Glacial Lances, you're always going to be coming out on top from those Drain Punches.
Of course, there is still that high horsepower, which will remain super effective, I guess, actually, on both of these Pokemon. But yeah, I mean, my +1 defense Iron Hands count a little rusty, so we'll have to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, we're going to have to find out here what Hirofumi has in store for the ending of this Game 1 against Javier. Deciding to Terra Poison. That's the other difference here. You'll usually see Terra Fire, Terra Grass, Terra Water on Calyrex Ice Rider, but no, Hirofumi at 5-0 at the World Championships with Terra Poison in this slot. Detect from the Iron Hands not to take any damage on this turn for Javier's, and the Incineroar attack goes towards the Raging Bolt Protect. So Raging Bolt's going to keep itself safe. Glacial Lance, though, is only going to go into Incineroar. It's intimidated and resisted, so really not anticipating too much damage there.
Yeah, Incineroar doesn't care too much, but it does get foiled in its attempt to knock out that Life Orb from the Raging Bolt. You know, Iron Hands has already been weakened, so you really don't want to take both those attacks, right? It's probably too dangerous to try to go for a Swords Dance or even a Drain Punch here. So, you know, perhaps go for a double protect. Hope you can knock off that Life Orb. And oh no, it's not going to happen.
No, he doesn't get the double protect. Javier, you see the sadness on his face. Draco Meteor does connect onto Iron Hands at the cost of 2 stages of special attack. You will certainly take out, knocking out the Iron Hands. And now it is Incineroar versus the world right now. The Stomping Tantrum will be super effective into that slot. But the knockoff brings Raging Bolt down to about 60% of its HP. Instead, going for the single target Glacial Lance instead.
Yeah, probably feeling safe enough with this, right? Where even though it's you know, a slow but sure way to pick this knockout, Javier realizes that there's no way he's going to be able to get his way out of this one, and Hirofumi takes Game 1.
Yeah, that was a really back and forth Game 1. I felt like Javier had a really strong start to it, but once Hirofumi was able to bring in the Calyrex there, even while intimidated, he wasn't too concerned because he knew the Iron Hands, even if it is a check to my Calyrex, it's not going to get an attack off onto my restricted.
Yeah, and like as much as that, you know, Iron Hands seems like it'd be a problematic Pokemon for this Calyrex to take out, the rest of the team handles it pretty well there, right? You know, Flutterman was the biggest check, but we see how poorly things went against the Raging Bolt while the Electric Terrain was still active, and then even Urshifu, right, even though it loses that matchup one-on-one, ignoring the Electric Seed because of the automatic critical hits.
Yeah, I think there are similarities on these teams, right? They, you know, there are like the Urshifus and Incineroar and whatnot, but it's really the differences in where it counts. Like your restricted Pokemon, the fastest you can be in Miraidon versus the slowest you can possibly have in Calyrex. But it's not just their speed tiers; it's when you're deciding to bring them on the field. Javier kind of committed to the terastallization too early, attacked into protects, had to actually swap out because of the choice specs item. So kind of a little bit too much of committing early on, where Hirofumi kept his flexibility throughout the match, waited for the right time to terastallize.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a very disastrous start for the game for Javier. We just, even though it seemed like he was trading Pokemon equally, they weren't Pokemon of equal value, plus
right.
he taking more damage.
All right, so let's see what Javier can do to force a Game 3. If not, Hirofumi will be one of the first trainers qualified for Day 2 of the World Championships tomorrow with one more victory. It's Calyrex Ice Rider and Ogerpon Cornerstone versus Miraidon and Iron Leaves. Iron Leaves is real, Scott.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I wasn't sure if we could see it, but perhaps looking for a little more immediate damage this time around. That Pokemon has a very high attack stat. If you're not familiar with it, you know, it's this strange, Verizian bot-looking thing. It's very sharp.
Yeah, very pointy,
but also very scared.
Very pointy edges on the Iron Leaves by there, but no attacks on the turn, just a protect. There's a Choice Specs Volt Switch with the Electric Terrain and Hadron Engine, just so much, massive amounts of damage into Calyrex Ice Rider on the other side. So the question, Javier deciding Incineroar or Iron Hands in that last slot. Already got some solid damage into the Ice Rider.
Yeah, but scary, right? There's a pretty realistic chance you're switching straight into an Ivy Cudgel since he already knows there was no follow me. Could be a lot of damage on the Incineroar. We'll have to see what this Ogerpon chose to do.
Intimidate will be effective onto both of Hirofumi's Pokemon as they are physical attackers. Here's the Ivy Cudgel. That's a rock type into fire, but no critical hit means Incineroar gets to stay on the field. And we saw last game just how little damage an intimidated Glacial Lance does to Incineroar. It means it will hang on in the red.
Yeah, I mean, now it has the option of just getting a fake out or something, but really taking a lot of damage on the way in. Nice read to attack that slot, and the protect from the Iron Leaves there just for naught.
Iron Leaves will swap onto the field here, or swap out of the field, I should say. Miraidon replacing it there. So we still haven't seen any action. We've confirmed it's real, but we've not seen it actually go for any attacks yet. Spiky Shield from Ogerpon Cornerstone, wanting to keep itself safe in case the fake out goes in that direction. And to protect as well from Calyrex Ice Rider. So Hirofumi really playing it slow with the potential of the fake out on the other side. Fake out goes towards Calyrex Protect.
A nice safe play by Hirofumi there, right? He's got an early lead once again, has nearly whittled down this Incineroar, and not doing anything silly, right? He still has the ability to follow me now with a fully healthy Ogerpon. Doesn't need to do anything too crazy just yet, and it's kind of actually easier for him now that the Iron Leagues is off the field, where there's kind of fewer options for Javier.
And that's why Ogerpon Cornerstone is my favorite supportive Ogerpon of the four versions of it, because with its ability Sturdy, you're essentially guaranteed follow me. You can redirect both attacks towards that slot. One, leaving Calyrex healthy, but also letting it guaranteed set up Trick Room.
Yeah, we'll have to see if he bothers to go for it, right? Where we got two slower Pokemon as Javier's other two, as you see the Iron Hands enter the field here. And yeah, you can just knock the Miraidon out. And I guess the Iron Leaves as well. You don't need the Trick Room for these other Pokemon.
Well, Iron Leaves is Iron Hands is gonna swap onto the field, activating the Electric Seed, giving it a defense boost. Quark Drive giving it an attack boost as well. So if a Glacial Lance or Ivy Cudgel go into that slot, it's going to be doing less damage because of the defense boost. Now Hirofumi will terrestrialize Calyrex Ice Rider yet again in this game to the poison typing, just changing how the matchup works. Ogerpon Cornerstone with its follow me, redirecting Volt Switch away. That's a lot of damage considering how you can try to make bulky. The Ogerpon does still 50%.
Yeah, but now what do you do, right? You switch Incineroar in. If it's not a Trick Room, it's just going to immediately go down here and lose its Intimidate in favor of a boost from the ability.
Right, the Glacial Lance or the As One ability would essentially negate the Intimidate on this spot here. So there's the Glacial Lance connecting onto both, of course. Incineroar goes down, hardly anything to the Iron Hands, but you're going to get one boost. So this should bring Calyrex Ice Rider back down to -1 since it's been intimidated twice.
Yeah, and now we see, I guess the Hero Iron Leaves will have to come back out and help try to deal some damage here, but now it's a rough spot where, it's pretty uncommon to see this Poison Terror type, but it really is annoying for this Iron Hands, who otherwise might like to use its fighting type attacks. Or even the Miraidon, right, who we've seen it using fairy type attacks earlier in the match, and poison resist that too.
And one of the great things in this matchup, particularly Scott, of why you see so many Trick Room teams with Ice Rider using Ogerpon Cornerstone instead of Amoonguss, Iron Leaves would have a field day because as a grass type you wouldn't care about Rage Powder, but you can't get around the follow me.
Yeah, and that looks really good here, right? Because otherwise this would just be a pin. We see the consideration of the normal type terrestrialization, which you don't see too often here, but would critically remove that weakness to the attack from Calyrex.
Yeah, so both this sturdy Ogerpon Cornerstone remaining on the field has just been so crucial for Hirofumi in game 2. Remember, he hasn't even set up Trick Room on any of these turns. That's how confident he's feeling right now. But yes, believe it or not, Iron Leaves is terastallizing into a normal type. You'd usually use this as a Cowrex Shadow Rider counter, so you're immune to Astral Barrage, but you might as well get rid of the Glacial Lance weakness while you're at it. So this Glacial Lance will not be doing too much damage to either of Javier's Pokemon. Ogerpon does protect itself there, so Iron Leaves will take a little bit of recoil damage from the spiky shield, and that is an attack into Cowrex, but it's not enough for the knockout. So he will be able to Glacial Lance in response, doing over half to Iron Leaves.
Oh, that's kind of devastating, right? Where now you basically have to protect the Iron Leaves while Iron Hands tries to pick up the knockout, and then Ogerpon, lets the Calyrex attack again for free. And I think that's predictable enough that Hirofumi, if he wants to, could go for his very first switch of the match somehow and perhaps mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Hirofumi still hasn't, not has he not revealed the fourth Pokemon, hasn't revealed the third Pokemon in this matchup. So it's just showing how much of a commanding position he is in right now. Iron Leaves will protect in that moment there. Doesn't want to take damage. Finally, the Drain Punch from Iron Hands is going to be more than enough to knock out Ogerpon Cornerstone, bringing the Iron Hands out really healthy as well from the recovery that Drain Punch gives to that slot. But at some point, this damage is eventually going to stick from Glacial Lance. It's only hitting Iron Hands here, who has a +1 defense, and no critical hits means it's not doing a lot.
Well, that was a sad Glacial Lance where see the Iron Hand just shrugging that one off, gains HP over the course of the turn. But on the flip side, we see the resources on Javier's side starting to whittle down, right? That Protect has been used. Do not want to allow it to be attacked by either of these Pokemon, and it's highly unsafe to try to switch the Miraidon in either. So very likely now that Hirofumi will take another knockout on this next turn.
Right, and effectively the Dazzling Gleam from this Fluttermane that just swapped in, it's going to be great into everything. You can either, Iron Leaves already half HP, so you don't have to worry about that. Miraidon on the switch in is a Dragon type weak to Fairy. Iron Hands weak to Fairy as well. I mean, this is just a really solid spot for Hirofumi.
Yeah, and once again, the Fluttermane loving the fact that this Terastallization has already been committed. It knows it can stay with those super effective Fairy type attacks. No option to Terastallize away from them.
Yeah, and I haven't done my Iron Leaves calcs, but I'm not really sure how strong Iron Leaves is defensively against Fluttermane with that really strong special attack stat. It's been kind of a menace of the format for the last year plus. But Moonblast into Iron Hands is not enough for the knockout. It's going to hang on in the red. Now Iron Leaves gets to go for its attack into the Calyrex there. So really cool animation. Really happy I've finally been able to see what Iron Leaves does in this matchup. Gets the knockout, but this Fluttermane has been left alone, and the Thunder Punch is nowhere near enough damage to even threaten a 2-hit KO.
Yeah, like that. Some of that almost makes the situation worse, right? Where you get rid of the Calyrex, who wasn't doing a whole lot anyway, and now Fluttermane could be threatening a knockout on either of these Pokemon, which makes these a little bit tricky. I guess the most positive part of a situation for Javier is at least, at some point likely going to be able to get that Miraidon in safely, but these are two tough Pokemon for it to face down.
Yeah, I guess the one benefit is that Iron Leaves has access to Protect yet again, right? So, Iron Hands is never really getting an attack off. It's the slowest Pokemon. Let it go down this turn. Let Miraidon reactivate Electric Terrain, reactivating Quark Drive. That might be what Javier could be going for, but just there's so much HP remaining on Hirofumi's end.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably have to sacrifice something here as Javier, or you just make a really aggressive read and hope for a mistake.
All right, so not actually letting Iron Hands get knocked out, instead going for the Detect this turn and choosing for Iron Leaves to be the target that gets thunderclapped and KO'd here in game 2. Now Javier is down to his last two Pokemon. It's going to be that Miraidon and Iron Hands, his Electric Core, his Quark Drive Core versus Fluttermane and Raging Bolt on the other end.
Yeah, we saw poor Javier there not loving it, which, you kind of spoke to Iron Leaves' questionable defensive stats. That Thunderclap picking up the knockout there. Perhaps the beginning, maybe the middle of the end here, where that low health Iron Hands is going to have a hard time making a move, and now Miraidon going to have to commit to an attack against these Pokemon.
Yeah, and you can't necessarily, if you want to do a Draco Meteor into the Assault Vest, Raging Bolt on the other end, well, then you'll literally never hit Fluttermane as long as the game lasts. So this Miraidon is really pinned into a difficult position.
Yeah, I needed one more knockout before we got to this point. Once again, Hirofumi just trading so well early in the game, putting Javier in a situation where even though he kept even on the Pokemon count, the board state is just too far behind.
Yeah, you got to give credit to Iron Hands and Iron Leaves. You can see how Javier has gotten to this position of 5-0. You can see the synergy that the team has, but unfortunately, the lack of flexibility of maybe Whimsicott not being that great, or the Trastalization not being as effective as Javier might have wanted, leading to the benefit of Hirofumi here. He goes for the double D-Tech, same properties as Protect, but he doesn't get it. Regardless, Fluttermane is going to be able to pick up the KO onto the Iron Hands. Now Miraidon down to half HP. The question is, where is he targeted? It's actually a discharge into both of them, but no critical hits means they both stick around, and Draco Meteor picking up the last KO, and Japan rejoicing as Hirofumi Kimura will guarantee at least a position in day 2 of the World Championships tomorrow.
And Hirofumi looking clean there. He is a world finalist and showing why. Excellent set by him, and you really have to be impressed by that, right? He just, but I think he never switched at all at any point in the set, right? I don't know if I've ever seen anyone win a game that way at the World Championship.
Did enter the field, but that was after knockouts.
He's the no switch challenge was a success. I probably wouldn't recommend going after that one, but hey, sometimes you can pull it off.
Yeah, and there's no need to swap, especially if your opponent, you can get into a hyper offensive situation where everybody's trading big blows back and forth that you might not even be in a position to take the turn to swap my Fluttermane out.